got Nancy Whiteman, Joe Hodis, all up here. Come on, who's having a great morning? Where are all my friends in the audience, my Illinois crew? All right. Well, I am thrilled to be here today. My name is Lori Parfit. I am with LKP Impact Consulting. I am your fractional CMO in the cannabis space. I am thrilled to be here with my esteemed panelists to talk about unified branding and a fragmented marketplace. I'd love to invite them all up to the stage. Christy, Howard, Angela, let's go. All right, well, thank you all for being here to talk about this amazing topic. We have three amazing panelists with us here today. Unfortunately, I don't think we'll have time for questions at the end, but if we do, we'll take a couple. And so, as I said, I'm Lori Parfit. I am your host for today. I am excited to have our guests here. They will each get to introduce themselves. Christy, would you like to start?
I would love to. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm excited to be up here with these amazing panelists. And my name is Christy Palmer. I'm co-founder and president at Kiva Confections. We started in 2010 back in California in the home kitchen. And we've grown now to have about 12 states under our belt and also a hemp operation and continuing to grow. So thank you all for being here.
Howard?
Hey, everybody. Thank you, Christy. Hey, everybody. Howard Schachter. I'm the Chief Communications Officer for Merimed, one of the 20 or so MSOs. We operate in 6 states and growing. We're in growth mode. Vertical in Maryland, Massachusetts, Delaware, Illinois. Growing into being vertical in Ohio and Missouri, and onward from there. I oversee all of our external, internal comms and partnership with our marketing team.
Thank you, Howard. Angela?
Hi, good morning. Angela Pai, Global Chief Marketing Officer at C-Cell. We work with all of the major brands and the MSOs across the U.S., and we have an international business as an ancillary business in support of all the up-and-coming and established brands within our industry. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. Thank you for those amazing introductions. All right, well, we have 3 topics we're going to be covering today, and hopefully we'll get through all of them because we are all talkers up here. And so our first topic is really talking about branding in a fragmented market. So as we know, in the cannabis space, it's different than any other industry. Each state kind of operates as its own country. And so as you think about scaling and creating a national brand, it's not as simple as just producing in one state and shipping across the country. There are many dynamics at play. And so Christy, can you start us off by talking about some of the challenges that you have seen as you've tried to scale Kiva across the country?
No, there are no challenges. It's been really easy.
I agree.
Yeah.
0.
It's all challenges, right? Yeah, some of the challenges of out-of-state expansion for Kiva have been maintaining a unified brand across all states, all markets. I was in New Jersey last week, and the packaging for our Camino tins, our gummies, they can't have any photos on them, no food, no so they have some kind of graphics on the top of the tin that doesn't look, it harkens back to what we have in California, which is these really cool scenes with, it really helps to paint a picture on our sleep tin of a lake with a little camping tent and a moon, and it really helps the consumer understand what a sleep product is. And we don't have those same luxuries when we go to New Jersey, for example. So we spend a lot of time and a lot of resources and energy trying to unify when that isn't possible. So it takes a lot of creativity and definitely a lot of work.
I love that. Howard?
Yeah, I would piggyback on what Christy said, and I can only imagine what it means to do what you're trying to do when you're licensing and working with licensees in every market and hoping for product consistency, which is what I would add, when we're all striving to be the next Coca-Cola, Starbucks, McDonald's, traditional CPG and retail brands. that consistency of the actual product is so difficult. And so what we've learned is the importance of investing in having a traveling training team, kitchen and operations, to really make sure that in every market we are delivering the exact same product, if not packaging, that our customers are looking for as they travel from market to market.
Yeah, that's
Angela?
a really great point to what both Christy and Howard brings up in terms of how do you develop a brand from market to market, have it be consistent, and also in terms of the quality of outcomes, right? So for us at CCELL, where our products are going to be very consistent from a quality standpoint, from an experience standpoint. So we're going to be able to deliver that for our partners, and then having the local insights of our partnerships here in the U.S., we're going to make sure that that smoking experience, that it's going to be to the quality of the specifications of what the partners and the brands really need, and at least be able to standardize that to give that as a sense of confidence that from market to market, you're going to be able to deliver on that type of outcome.
So we've had a couple of things that I'm hearing from all of you, which is you have to have some packaging consistency so that people can identify your brand while still adhering to regulations. And then you have to make sure that you have the right quality levels, because like I said earlier, you can't produce in one state and ship across the country, with the exception of what you're doing, Angela, which is hardware. Yep. But it's still all about consistency and making sure that you have the same product. Like you mentioned, Howard, McDonald's. When you go to McDonald's anywhere, it is the same product. And so the same product, the same experience. And so how do you make sure that you're able to differentiate yourselves within these markets? So as you're scaling, as you're moving into these markets, what types of things can you do to differentiate yourself?
So that is a great question, particularly relevant for us. As an MSO, when you talk about scaling and consistency, on one hand, it's about our products, and we're very proud of the work that we've done. We've got killer brands, I'll say objectively and subjectively, in our Betty's Eddies, Fruit Chews, our Nature's Heritage flour. We have a soft baked goods line called Bubby's Bake, etc. And so everything we've talked about has to align with consistency and quality on the brand side, and being in markets where those brands can win. But we're also a retailer, right? We're vertical, so we also have to be in markets where our retail brands can win. And it's particularly relevant, I say, today, because we happen to be one of the few MSOs that's in growth mode. So very relevant question. Most of the other MSOs are mature, and some are even shedding assets. So for us, it's about high growth, limited license markets. Regulations are critical. In some markets there's potency caps, for example. Pennsylvania, you can't sell an edible. So today, that's not a market we can win in with our brand. So, it's such an effed up situation for all of us, right? We're farmers, we're retailers, we're co-packers. It's insanity every day.
Right. So that's all about how do you create that consistency when you're dealing with so many different partners. Angela, do you have a comment on that?
Differentiation is a really critical topic, and especially from, what my perspective is looking into that marketplace, where each customer is going to want a level of customization and differentiation that helps them stand out. But the range of hardware that you have available is going to be a certain subset or a certain full set. So how do you create that level of flexibility and customization for your client, for your brand, that allows them to be super competitive within whichever market they're entering? And I think a lot of that dialogue has to be really understanding what their needs are, how they want to go to market, what their segmentation is, and what that market entry and their plan for go-to-market looks like.
I couldn't agree with you more. And that's part of the secret sauce to really making it happen. Christy, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, I'd love to add to that. I think part of our strategy of differentiation is actually like making everything the same and not having different products from state to state, not having different quality levels from state to state. And like you, Howard, we've invested pretty heavily in our training teams as well to go state to state, help our partners manufacture under our best practices, solve problems, things like that. Because really, what you're trying to do with differentiation is helping the consumer understand why they should always buy your product. And so you get so few chances to keep them on your brand, right? To get them on your brand and keep them on your brand. And so, man, that quality has to be dialed in, and you have to hit the nail on the head like every single time in order to hold on to your customers.
I couldn't agree with you more. Howard?
Yeah, so I again, piggybacking, Chrissy, when you talk about training of the bud tenders, I think a lot of companies do not pay enough attention to just how critical that bud tender training is, whether it's your own in our case or wholesaling and training others. One anecdote, a few of us on the management team, we all visit markets, all of us do and need to, but we took the extra step this year in not only visiting our markets, but actually working the sales floor, working alongside our bud tenders, packing in our cultivation facility, trimming, and really understanding at the very base level exactly what these folks do every single day and what does it mean to deliver that consumer message at the register and on the sales floor. And it was so enlightening. First off, incredibly proud to see how well we're doing. I'm really proud of the teams that are involved in that. But to see and hear directly from consumers the questions they have, the vulnerabilities that they show, the empathy you have to deliver, and at the end of the day, so many of your sales are going to come via the words that the bud tenders use.
So I think that's a really important point. And this is an industry where consumers a lot of times don't make their own decisions. Your bud tenders are the front line. And so how do you engage and inspire that bud tender? How do you connect with that bud tender so they want to be there selling your products? That's a really important point, because in every other retail experience, you're able to walk the aisles, you're able to pick product up, you're able to look at it, smell it, touch it, sometimes even taste it. And in the cannabis space, we don't have that luxury. So our bud tenders are truly the front line. And I think having that focus on education is really important. Angela?
This is one of my favorite topics about bud tender education and the importance of bud tenders, where you're looking at statistics of them being able to affect 40 to 70% of conversion at the retail level. So you're talking to somebody who is not just servicing a customer. You're talking about a fleet of really important people within our industries who are affecting what customers are walking out the dispensary door, right? I think maybe with the exception of the alcohol industry, there are very few industries where the consumer who's walking into a store is already predisposed to a purchase. You know that 9 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 people walking into a dispensary want to buy something and want to walk out with something. They may have something specific in mind, or they're open to suggestion, but that 40 to 70% of openness to suggestion, the importance of bud tender, what the bud tender knows, what the bud tender is aware of, and what they're incentivized by are so critical. So from an education standpoint, how knowledgeable they are, that's going to affect the consumer experience at the store level. That's going to affect what comes out in terms of the basket and the success of brands. So if brands are really serious about being successful in our industry, they absolutely have to be education first and to do all the foundational work.
100%. And look, a majority of our sales in the markets where online ordering is allowed to happen is happening before anybody walks in. So to have the bud tenders understand that it's not just about handing over the package, but asking additional questions. Oh, you have flour. Do you have a grinder? Do you have a consumption device, et cetera? Where there's major upsell opportunity, as well as going above and beyond in customer service is a huge opportunity.
As well as the consumer path to purchase. So having somebody come in and talk to a bud tender, if you're a nascent consumer, you might not know what you want, and you might go in there and say, hey, I want a gummy. And it's really important for that bud tender to understand that consumer path to purchase and say, that's great, I'm glad you want a gummy. But what do you want that gummy for? What are you trying to solve? And take them through that path to purchase so you make sure that they get the right product for them.
Yeah.
Angela?
So let's think about set and setting, right? A consumer comes in, it might be a high traffic dispensary in a predominantly tourist location. What the customers walking in that door is going to be asking for, they're going to want a ready-to-use vape if they're vapors. They're going to want a pre-roll if they're flower, and they're going to want an edible that is very discreet for whatever their purpose is, whether it's about chilling out, going to sleep, or having a few giggles. But it's going to be really specific, and for the bud tender to really dial in on how are you using it, what are you going to, where are you going to take that product, and that's going to affect the overall consumption experience.
1,000%. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to get on my own personal soapbox here for a second. So you ask all those right questions. Imagine, right, picture, if you will, the consumer that has very little education on the product and how powerful that bud tender experience will be that we've talked about, and asking all the right questions. And and the person admits, it's about anxiety, it's getting on a plane and I can't, whatever it may be. And then the answer to what product they need is, oh, well, you should try Penis Envy number 5. It's a great strain. I think we need to do a little bit more work on strain names. I have all the respect in the world for the legacy market. I really do. But when when I'm talking to a grandma about the product that's right for her, and it's Gorilla Glue this and Skunk that, it doesn't sound like it really belongs in the health and wellness space that we're all trying to achieve.
Exactly. Chrissy, thoughts from you?
Well said, Howard. Yeah, and I think, so then your bud tender recommends whatever strain, whatever product, and then that consumer takes that product, they open up the lid or, and they find something they don't want to find, right? It's the quality is bad, there's mold, there's, they taste it, it tastes like weed, like those affect all of us, right? All along the supply chain. They lower the reputation of the cannabis industry. And so, yeah, I think it takes all of us working really hard and working in conjunction with each other to make sure those experiences don't happen.
Yeah, and so it doesn't matter which form factor it is, right? So it could be an inconsistently rolled pre-roll, right? Or it could be, speckles on your edibles, which I hope nobody ever has to kind of come across. And then, for vapes, the consistency of the oil, the color of the oil, is it clogging, is it, crystallizing, and if you have it in your pocket, is going to leak. All of those types of consumer experiences are going to impact on the brand confidence, and it's going to go back to the retailer. And hardly with fails that the brands are hearing about it. It's really the retailer who's taking the brunt of those types of negativity, and that at some point they're gonna you need to fix your hardware. We're gonna ship all of your product back. So that cost of not doing something right is going to be exponential at a market entry type of situation.
Agreed.
You lose that shelf space at the get-go. It's going to take a while for you to get it back, especially in the market entry situation.
Well, absolutely. So it always costs less to retain a customer than it does to get a new one. So it's really important that you continue to build on those relationships. So let's move to our second topic, which is how do you scale a brand? How do you think about the different markets that you want to go into? Since you can't enter everything all at once, you have to think strategically about where is the next right step for my brand, for my product, for my dispensary. Where should I be going? So Howard, when you're looking at this as a multi-state operator, how do you prioritize different markets? What metrics are you looking at, regulations, as you think about where you're going to scale?
Right, so it's a lot of what I mentioned earlier. Again, for us, it's a complex question because we have to think both in terms of where our brands can win, and there's white space for that, but also where there's the right level of competition for us to win. So, and we are in growth mode right now. We are a hunter at the moment, and we're thinking about the states where we've already succeeded. So the East and the Midwest for sure is where we're thinking about first. But there's also exciting states we're thinking about, like Nevada and New Jersey, New York, if they can get their act together, because we believe that you need to be in a state like New York if you're going to win as a brand long term. But we look at a ton of sales data and competitive data, and I give kudos to the platforms out there that feed us that kind of information in the industry that have gotten that much better and more sophisticated every year. But again, then the regulations too, as I said, are there potency caps? Are our products or form factors that we want to push allowed to be in that market and such? It's a three-dimensional chessboard.
So you mentioned data, and I want to dig into that a little bit. So when I joined this industry back in 2019, there was no data, there was no consumer path to purchase. Everything was just kind of starting up. So when you think about data and you think about utilizing it to pick the markets that you want to move into, what data sources have you found most effective for doing that? And what are the key metrics that you're looking at?
Yep, so that question for us bleeds a little into how we're approaching marketing too. And without giving away too much secret sauce, we think we've cracked the code a little bit on building a tech stack that's a combination of off-the-shelf retail software, Placer AI, with some of the great work our tech team has done in building proprietary software in. And we're able to look at the consumer journey from literally zip code to stores they've traveled to before they've gone to a dispensary, and we're able to then link that to, did they make a purchase in our own dispensary, which is the holy grail, and where are they going after they've left the dispensary. So if you look at that type of, and you think of all of that as a incredibly in-depth heat map, it points to a lot of things you want to think about in terms of retail location specifically and brand distribution, and then on the marketing side opens up abundant opportunity for strategic partnerships and such. For example, one of our dispensaries, we've seen that there's customers to our dispensary highly index for going to a Walmart, the local Walmart, after coming to our store. Well, heck, what if we hand out $10 Walmart, coupons, et cetera, right? That type of, we're thinking about that ahead of time in making decisions about real estate, but boy, in real-time marketing decisions, it's becoming a really powerful tool.
So I love that. That's very much about that consumer journey and also making sure that you're interacting with your community. So Walmart is a big company, but it's also, if they're going to local operations as well, how do you make sure that you engage those other retailers to help build up everybody's brand together? Angela?
Well, to that point about how do you prioritize your markets and look at the data to make those, call it investment decisions, which market you're going to go in first. For us, there's a benefit that, working with brands, as they're thinking about expanding beyond their home market, they're also looking at who are they going to be their partners, from a production standpoint, from a logistics standpoint. Are they going to have their own direct sales? Are they going to do that in conjunction with someone else? And then if you get the holy grail relationship of being able to have retailer and be able to get that retail data, I think that's probably the most important part of your decision making, because you're going to be able to look at a market from a volume standpoint and a value standpoint, but the retailer is actually going to give you a lot of velocity information that's going to help you make that decision. So, the retailer data, I think, is really critical as part of, how do you prioritize from market to market? What is happening within California that's different from Michigan, and what we're seeing in terms of New Jersey.
Right. So Christy, how about you with Kiva and a brand, and how you're looking at taking it from state to state? And you've been really successful in making sure that Kiva is consistent and has a great presence. So when you think about your next states, what are some of the key things that you're looking at?
Yeah, so similar to Howard and to Angela, who the partners are, regulations, how many people live in that state, what are the adult use regulations, are edibles allowed? And one kind of example that I'll give is back when we entered the Nevada market, it was like 2016, 2017, sometime around then. And we got there, super excited to make our products, and then come to find out that the state doesn't have a whole lot of supply like California does. Our products use cold water hash in our chocolates at this point. To make cold water hash, there's a lot of waste in that process. And so of course the partner's saying, all right, well, we can put your products on the shelf for $45 a bar to cover the price of the cold water hash. Or we can switch to a different extraction method that's cheaper, more efficient, and all of a sudden you're like, well, our brand promise is cold water hash. And so you get presented with some of these questions and some of these issues along the line that you kind of have to dig deep and decide what the right choice is. But it's just an example of how you may think you have all those other things covered, and then lo and behold, a curveball comes in.
Yeah,
Right.
I would say 100% the reliability of your supply chain, in terms of your input product, your biomass, your hardware, their availability in terms of inventory and how quickly they're going to be able to support you. It's like everything, right? From your biomass all the way to your packaging. That's going to affect how effective you are in terms of executing your go-to-market.
Yeah, and you have to look at every facet
You don't want to
of that.
launch and then have no inventory on a certain part of your supply chain, and then you're just stuck.
Yeah, or
You
launch.
only have one chance to make a first impression.
Yeah, or launch with your partner, and then that partner's priorities change. They have lots of different parts in the supply chain, and then all of a sudden they cut out manufacturing. It's like, oops, well, that wasn't a great, this isn't going to work for us anymore. So yeah, finding a relationship that's long-term is really hard. This business is changing very quickly, so no fault of their own. Partners' businesses are evolving just like our business is evolving. And so, yeah, there's just so many things.
So many hiccups along that supply chain, just making sure that you're finding the right partner who's going to be able to support you at your agility and level of growth, or accordion out, in and out, just to be able to accommodate, what your cash flow situation is going to be, how aggressive you want to go into different segments, and having the right product that's going to be able to pivot when you need to, because everything turns so quickly, right?
Right, so
Christy,
I agree.
can I play moderator for a second?
Of course.
Christy, I love your brand, everything that you guys do, and I'm curious, do you deliver the marketing in each of the states you're in, or do you rely on your partners to do that?
For the most part, yeah, we do the marketing. That's kind of our area, marketing and sales support wherever we can. We have found that if you have somebody in market thinking about your product every single day, they eat, live, breathe Kiva, then we have the best chance of success. But it goes back to the size of the market. And sometimes we have one person covering two markets or a couple regions to sort of spread that cost out. But yeah, we found that the best kind of chance of success is to support the brand as much as we possibly can. And retailers ask for it, right? When you place your product, they say, okay, so what are you going to do for me now? And okay, we're going to have a salesperson, we're going to have marketing support, yeah.
Oh, I love that. And so, Howard, you just sort of segued me into a question for you, which is, Christy and Angela are talking about scaling a brand. How do you scale a dispensary brand? So as you're thinking about, going into new markets as an operator, as a retailer, how do you make sure you're meeting that market where it's at? And how do you prioritize those markets from a retail perspective versus a brand perspective?
Yep. So today we operate as two different retail brands depending on the market. We're Thrive Dispensary in Illinois and Maryland. We're Panacea Dispensary in Massachusetts. But we are moving towards unifying brand, and so everything you're talking about is what's on the table today across what we say all five senses, right? So it's not just name and signage. it's uniform, it's soundtrack, it's smell, it's training a bud tender. It's all of these things that, traditional retail and CPG would laugh at if they heard that we're grappling with those questions in cannabis, but we are. And fortunately, we're thinking about all of those things before we roll out what we're really excited about in terms of our next retail flagship brand.
I love to hear that. And so you've thought about being in different markets with different brands, but now how do you unify that to make sure that you have that coverage and that brand equity across the country? So let's move into our third topic, which is really go-to-market strategy. And so, like we've covered a lot during this panel, every time you go into a new market, you have to think about how you're going to enter it differently, because Illinois versus Maryland versus Washington State versus Colorado have different market dynamics. And you have to think about how are you going to position your brand? How are you going to launch your brand? What are the different things you need? And this is a capital conference. And so we're thinking about the financials behind entering new markets as well. So Angela, do you think you could give us a little bit of insight as to how you think about launch strategy, how do you budget for it, and what are those key considerations that you have as you enter each new market?
Absolutely. I really wish there was a really easy answer to that question. So I can say, well, you really need 5 figures, 6 figures, 7 figures. I would actually go back to the strategic aspect of certain conditions, right? For a brand, us in support of a brand, how are they going to credential themselves within that particular market? What is their approach in terms of overall education? What is going to be their engagement in terms of the overall community as well as the retail environment? So when you're thinking about the level of development, what is the level of sophistication of that consumer at that point in time? If you let's say we look at a very, my market where I'm most familiar with is with California. It's so developed. The price compressions, the competitiveness is really, really high versus going into New York and New Jersey, and you're thinking about, well, within the vape category, how developed is solventless? How developed is live resin? Is it still really a distillate market? But then, what type of hardware is going to be able to give the best consumer experience? What's the level of customization? And then there's also right now the prevalence of disposable all-in-ones. All-in-ones in California is, a small fraction, maybe 10% compared to, say, in New York where it's, 25% of the market. So then the type of offering that you make available to a brand so that they can go in with something that's going to be cash ready, and while they're developing the sophistication and the taste levels of the market, it's going to be very different. So that level of investment is going to encompass and create it in tandem with the brand.
And so does that affect some of the markets that you're considering going into as different brands and operators, how much you're going to have to invest, and how do you make sure you have that available so that you can launch successfully?
Well, I don't think at this point in time any brand has unlimited funds, right? So it's for each new market you're going into is, okay, how are we going to bootstrap this thing? What do we need from a product offering standpoint that we know it's going to hit? That's going to create the cash flow right away so that you bring on the various phases and the stages like stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, that's going to be able to fund that rest of your rollout. So picking that particular, front runner and then using that from a modeling and economic standpoint to be able to make sure your subsequent phase is going to work.
I love that. Howard?
Yeah, no, I would agree with everything that Angela's saying. I guess for us at the end of the day, when it comes to marketing strategies that we deploy, there's only so much you can do, particularly in the fragmented markets we're dealing with, the regulations that are out of whack, the limited opportunity to use mass media. So we challenge ourselves to look for differentiated strategies by market that could make sense. For example, there's no better pairing than music and cannabis, particularly high in Massachusetts, Boston, where our company is headquartered, and we just announced last week a partnership with two of the biggest, most iconic music venues in Massachusetts. So the first exclusive cannabis sponsorship downtown, and figure out how to activate that both from a consumer perspective at shows, but also B2B, you know, entertainment and such with wholesale buyers and whatnot. We're really excited about. And then, of course, what's, you know, near and dear to my heart is the role that earned media has played for us. You know, we did the world's largest pot brownie a couple of years ago, which continues to be the gift that keeps giving for us in terms of media relations. And then this past summer, as sort of our tip to help out the entire industry, we recreated the Boston Tea Party with a 280E THC party, throwing weed boxes into Boston Harbor, all dressed up in colonial outfits. But we had a lot of fun with both, and we've got more things planned that are really cool that I can't talk about today. But the point is, how do we leap off of cannabis into mainstream, which is what we're all trying to do. And so we push ourselves, and PR is an economical way to do that.
So first and foremost, congratulations on those opportunities. So when we think about those music venues and engaging with the consumer that way, how do we make sure that that translates to sales at retail?
No, that's a great question. So, so are you talking about visibility and getting folks into the funnel, or keeping them there, and how do you measure that? So I would say first and foremost, it's a visibility play. But we are working on activation strategies, of course, as well, to draw the straight line between what we're doing inside a venue, billboards that we're doing to support the sponsorship and such, and how are we going to drive folks into the store, and then how do we bring it to life in the store as well, and bring music as a cultural component to our retail brand in a smart way.
So I love that. Angela, did you have a
I
comment?
was going to say, I think that's where, with Christy, with edibles, it's so discreet. So you can take it, and it's smokeless, right? So you can actually take it into venues where you're not combusting. And it's very portable, you know? So I think, you know, from an edible standpoint, that's a huge plus. And then from, you know, a vape category, you do have that portability of your device that you can take with you, whatever your preferred type of, you know, oil or extraction is, and whatever your flavor profile. So taking, you know, non-combustibles into social venues and being able to share that, I think, you know, there's certain categories that are going to be able to push the boundaries of that much more so than, you know, other more traditional categories.
Agreed. It's what is that conducive to, and how do you make sure you activate that properly and create that engagement at retail? So Christy, from your perspective as a brand who's gone across a lot of different states, when you enter new markets, how do you make sure that you engage with the consumer, that you're building that brand awareness up front, so that as consumers come into the dispensaries, they start asking for Kiva?
Yeah, I think it's a long-term, like, overarching strategy. Having been in the market, having been around as long as we have, definitely helps to raise brand awareness and connect with consumers. But I think you have to go in and do fun stuff. You have to listen to the consumer and the bud tender and the buyer in the market, because they know their territory the best. And you don't want to bring your California playbook into New York and be like, oh, we know everything about the market. You have to be humble and listen and understand what might work in that market. And if you're going to do fun stuff, like go to music venues, throw a wellness event, for example, then when your consumer goes to the store, you need to remind them why they're there. Again, with a beautiful display, something nicely merchandised, your bud tenders kitted out, or talking about your product openly and authentically. So it's like all those little points. But yeah, can't stress enough how important it is to change up your game depending on what state you're in.
So I love that. That's about meeting the market and meeting the consumer where they're at, because what you do in California is not necessarily what you can do in Michigan. And making sure that everything you're doing is sort of personalized for that market is incredibly important. Angela, did you have another comment?
There's a huge benefit of being an ancillary company in terms of us being able to lead our brands, our customers, to marketing activities that they can't do themselves. So some of the ideas and some of the new initiatives that we're going to put in place are going to be able to kind of push the forefront of marketing, where we can lead in with a conversation, then actually start the consumer journey for our brands in a way that they can't effectively utilize from a marketing toolkit standpoint. So, I'm really excited in this role for CCEL for us to be able to bring our partners on and get them earlier on that customer journey.
And you have a very different dynamic. You're able to go across state lines and do all of those things.
We can ship across state lines with our batteries, but from the vape cart standpoint, we can lead certain conversations and use marketing channels that plant-touching brands can't.
Agreed.
I'm jealous.
So we are just about out of time. I'm sorry to cut this short, but I would love it if each of our panelists would just give the audience one thing that you'd want to leave them with. Christy, let's start with you.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, we're at the Capitol Conference, so and tailoring all of these marketing initiatives to each state is expensive. So make sure you're resourced when you jump into another state, and that you've thought through, you've gone through your budget, and you've cut it back and slashed it and reviewed it. Make sure everything that you're spending on is worthy of being spent on.
Howard?
Yeah, I would just say bud tender training we talked about earlier, such a critical component. You could have nailed everything on product quality, packaging, marketing strategy. You could have lines down the dispensary street to come in, but if your bud tenders don't deliver, you're not going to win.
Angela?
It's not the first purchase, it's your second and third purchase that are the most important conversions. Getting trial is one thing, but getting that second and third purchase, absolutely critical for success.
Love all of that. Well, thanks to all of you for being here. Thanks to our amazing panelists. Let's give it up for them.